Welcome everyone to the Wilmette Library's Solar 101 presentation for ComEd territory in Illinois. Go Green Wilmette gives thanks to ISEA, which is the Illinois Solar Education Association, for providing a slide deck and a solar ambassador. You will be meeting longtime volunteer and solar ambassador Jay Futterman. Jay lives in Highland Park and owns 2 solar systems on different homes. And so he's been through the process multiple times and is excited about solar. He will be sharing with us how solar energy works for homeowners in Illinois in the ComEd territory, benefits of residential solar energy, upfront costs and long-term savings, resources for finding reputable installers, and much more. My name is Amy Hannah Downey, and I have been a board member for Go Green Wilmette since 2017. Since 2018, I've been working in the solar industry in the residential space. I'm also a Wilmette resident for my whole life, and I follow the Wilmette permitting process for solar. And I follow it closely because I permit the solar projects that we have from the company I work with. If anyone has specific questions on permitting, feel free to talk to me after this. And if you need to run out, we can exchange emails, that's fine. And also, did you know that Wilmette has a community solar program? So if you're feeling like solar may not be for you for your home, there's another option to still go solar through the community solar program. And that is on the wilmette.gov website. So thank you very much. And thanks, Jay. Here we go.
All right, here we go. All right. Thank you, Go Green Wilmette. Like Amy said, I'm Jay Futterman. I've been volunteering with the Illinois Solar Education Association, I think since about 2018 as a solar ambassador. I don't work in the industry, but I'm a big fan of solar and want to share my enthusiasm. And my goal is to help as many people as I can take that step and get solar on their homes or elsewhere. ISEA or ISEA, our mission is to educate and advocate for the widespread application of solar and other forms of renewable energy for the people of Illinois. This organization's been around since 1975. We're a 501c3 charitable organization. We do events like this. We do a solar tour every fall, webinars, newsletters, and advocacy. There's a sister organization that is made up of companies in the solar industry. They split off in 2020. And we have about 150 business members, and they do policy work, job fairs, and networking events and things of that sort. So some themes for my presentation tonight. Overall, I like to keep this planet a nice place to live. Solar is a big part of that. Solar feels great. You can be a leader, and your neighbors will follow. If you see a house with solar, inevitably, you'll see some of their neighbors also have solar, and it kind of spreads out from there. Solar is the cheapest way to power your home in Illinois, and some form of solar is available to everyone. Changing how you get your energy is one of the easiest and most impactful things you could do to counter climate change. And not going solar means you're choosing to pay more for your energy and to support dirty energy. So where are we in Illinois with our electricity? Well, as of the end of 2023, there was not much solar installed in Illinois. Only about 2% of the energy mix. If you look at the pie chart there, that big blue section is nuclear. We're predominantly a nuclear state. The orange section is coal. That's a shrinking wedge, fortunately. The gray is fossil gas, which is probably increasing a little bit. Then the yellow is wind, and then there's a little blue section over there, which is solar. There's probably more than that, which is just being consumed what we call behind the meter. But it's still a small fraction. But we have state laws in place that require the proportion of renewable energy to increase significantly over the coming years. And we're on that ramp up right now. So if you look back 2018, 2019, we really had very little solar in Illinois. But after some legislation passed in the state that encourage solar. It's really been taking off dramatically, and it will continue to do so. And this is not just a technology that's confined to the suburbs or to affluent people or to tree huggers. This is installed all over Illinois because in Illinois, solar works. Economically, it makes sense. So it's in red counties, it's in blue counties, it's in rural areas, it's everywhere, and growing quite a bit. So why do people go solar? There's a lot of reasons. Does anyone want to volunteer and say like why they're interested in solar? What kind of brings them? Okay. Well, yeah, Paul.
My daughter guilted me into it.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, so probably your daughter was probably thinking about her future, I would guess, and reducing carbon emissions, environmental concerns are definitely a big reason why a lot of people come to it. Improving public health is important, right? So solar helps displace polluting sources of energy production. And if you happen to live near a coal plant, you appreciate the fact that you don't have to breathe in that air anymore. Solar is a big job creator. We have some evidence for that in the audience today. It will save you money on the electric bill. We'll go into that in quite a bit of detail as we go on. It increases the home's value, right? So this is an investment that you make in your house. You have your own portable power plant on the roof, and that's generating value every day. And solar, even before I was into like the environmental aspects of it, I thought it was just super cool. I remember as like a little kid, just being amazed at a solar calculator. Like light makes this calculator work. How cool is that? So it's an inexhaustible energy supply. Every day there's enough solar power striking the earth from the sun to power the planet for a year. It's just about how do we capture that? And kind of going hand in hand with that, I think is for a lot of people, it's about resilience too. So the fact that you can make your own energy, you can store your own energy, gives people sort of a sense of more energy security, which I think is important. So I'm going to let y'all in on a secret that the government doesn't want you to know. Climate change is real. So I'll just a couple slides on this. The Paris Accords that most of the countries in the world agreed to several years ago set a target of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Well, 2024 was the hottest year the planet has experienced in recorded history, and we broke that 1.5 C mark, and it's due to fossil fuels burning and carbon dioxide in the air. For hundreds of thousands of years, we've had carbon dioxide levels under 300 parts per million. And since industry really took off in 1950, we've really surpassed that level, and it's causing all kinds of problems. And it's not just about polar bears and things of that sort. This is what hits people in their pocketbooks. So if we look at this chart of billion-dollar disasters, this is adjusted for inflation. Back in the 80s and 90s, on average, we'd have like 3 in the United States per year. In recent years, we're in the 20s. So everybody pays for this. Everybody pays for what's going on with the environment. And I'm sure you all remember last year from the Canadian wildfires, our skies were orange, flooding in Asheville from a hurricane, and then just a couple months ago, the LA wildfires, all of these exacerbated by climate change. And we have different ways of dealing with this. We can deny it, we can ignore it, we can get depressed by it, or we can take action. And that's what brings me here today, is to try and get y'all to take some action on this. But that doesn't have to be your reasoning, right? It could be a purely economic one. That's just my story. So what's holding people back? Well, there are some myths about solar. You have to have a southern exposure to put the panels on. Well, southern exposure is generally the best. You'll make perhaps the most energy that way. Mine are on the east and on the west facing sides of my roof, and I'm doing just fine. It'll be harder to sell my house. This has been looked at with studies of real estate transactions. This really hasn't borne out. I think given the choice between two similar houses where one produces its own power, most people will tend to favor that house, especially considering it really doesn't require any maintenance. It just collects the sun's energy and lowers your bills. Another myth is that it's too expensive. Well, that may have been the case 10 years ago or more, but solar has really come down in cost, and there's a lot of great incentives that we'll go into. It really pays for itself. It really is the smart financial decision. People can have concerns about what will happen to the roof. You know, this is proven technology in thousands and thousands and thousands of roofs. You go with a reputable solar installer, this stuff works. Leaks are extraordinarily rare. Some people have concern that the utility will not pay for the extra power produced. In Illinois, the utility does. This is a process called net metering. Not every state has this, but this is also part of how solar pays for itself in Illinois, and we'll go into that later. Installing solar will increase taxes, property taxes. Not in Illinois, it doesn't. What about the weather? It's too cold. It is cold here, but you know, electronics often work better when it's cold. They work sometimes less well when it's really hot. And you know, if there's snow on top of them, yeah, they don't work. But we factor in how much snow you get on your roof. That's part of how your solar installer is going to quote you a size for your system. And they hold up actually quite well to hail, winds, and sleet. You know, when the hurricanes came through this past year in Florida, there's a housing development there called Babcock Ranch, which they have acres and acres of solar that basically powers the community, and they have underground power lines. Solar panels were fine. That community kept power while everyone else around lost power. So they're built to withstand this stuff. And then what about we don't get enough sun? Yeah, we do have cloudy days here for sure. But if you look at sort of a radiance map here, we're certainly not, you know, Southern California or Arizona. But a lot of the early adoption of solar took place in Germany, and Germany gets about as much sun as Alaska does. In Illinois here, we're actually about the same latitude as Spain, and we get similar sun exposure as Spain does. So people think of Spain as a sunny place, and we're actually comparable. So all this is kind of in the larger setting of changes going on in our electric grid. We're gradually moving from a system of large power plants under centralized control to more of a distributed grid, where we have solar panels here, we have batteries here, we have electric cars charging here that are all becoming more and more connected. And the cool thing about solar is that you get to be your own power plant and be part of this change. So how does it all work? On the surface level, it's pretty simple. My solar company friends here will certainly attest that it's a lot more complicated than this, but for the average homeowner, this is pretty much what you have to know. The sun is going to strike the solar panel or photovoltaic array on your roof. That causes electrons to start flying around, and they move in what's called a direct current, or DC. Now, things in your house, the lights here in my computer, they all use AC, or alternating current. So you have to convert the DC to AC, and that's done via an inverter. Those inverters can be on the back of the panels, what's called a microinverter, or those panels can all feed into a sort of a box on the outside of the house, which is a different type of inverter. From there, it becomes alternating current, or AC, and then it goes into your service panel in the basement and gets used by all your household electric consuming devices. What you're not using gets fed out onto the grid and passes through your smart meter, and the utility will measure how much is coming in and how much is going out. Whether the sun is shining or not, you don't really notice a difference with how things in the house work. When you flip the switch, the lights go on, whether those electrons are coming from your roof or from the nuclear power plant down the road. And there's really almost no maintenance. There's pretty much no moving parts. The panels generally are going to last for 25 plus years. So it's pretty simple. All right, the process to go solar. Well, for most people, it's going to go on the roof. So think about your roof. How much life is left in your roof? If you think you're going to need a new roof in 3-4 years, probably best to do your roof and then put the panels on top. Think about which way your roof is facing, right? If all you have is a northern facing roof and you got great trees shading the southern side, leave those trees in place. There's other ways for you to go solar. Think about how long you're going to stay in your house. If you're planning to move in a couple years, maybe get community solar, leave the installation to the next owner. Understand your energy consumption, right? So take a look at your bill. We use units of kilowatts or kilowatt hours. You can remember back to the old style light bulbs that were 40 watts or 100 watts. Well, a kilowatt is 1,000 watts. A microwave uses like 1,200 watts of energy. And a kilowatt hour is that much energy for an hour. So when you look at your bill, you'll see how many kilowatt hours you've used. So get a grasp of that because you're going to want to think about, well, how much do I use in a year? Think about the future. How much am I going to use next year or the following year? Do you have an electric car? Are you going to get one? Is your gas-powered water heater starting to get old and you're ready to replace it with an electric heat pump? Is your air conditioning unit getting old and you're ready to use a heat pump in place of that? And then optimize your efficiency. The cheapest solar panel is the one that you don't have to install. So whatever you could do to reduce the electricity you use is going to ultimately help you in the end. And ComEd can help you out with that. They do free home energy assessments. Having a professional come out to do an energy audit, I think, is very valuable. We had one a few years ago and taught me all kinds of stuff I never even thought about. Then there's all sorts of simple stuff. If you haven't changed out your light bulbs to LEDs, do that. Think about sealing off leaky areas with caulk or window seal. Make sure your attic is well insulated. When you get appliances, make sure they're Energy Star appliances. Think about maybe a programmable thermostat to just minimize your energy use. And if you have an electric car, think about now how you're charging it. If you don't have solar, you're basically driving a car that's powered by nuclear and coal. Which is a lot less sexy than having one powered by the sun. So you can really drive on sunshine if you combine electric cars with solar panels. So ISEA has some resources that I think are very helpful. We have a solar calculator, which is a little bit wonky, but you can plug in some numbers and it'll give you some ideas of some stuff. I think it's probably a little bit too techy for the average homeowner, but you can certainly play around with it. I would definitely check out our Find a Professional tool. We have listings of many solar companies in your area, and we generally recommend having a few of them come out to assess your house and give you a proposal so you could do a little comparison. And we have a nice FAQ section for homeowners on there as well, and that's all at illinoissolar.org. So when you've decided, all right, I'm going to take the plunge, I want to go solar, the general process, you're going to have an installer come out and schedule a site evaluation. You're going to decide who amongst those you want to go with. They're going to help you out through the process with permitting with your village. They're going to help you out with an interconnection agreement with the utility. They're going to get the panels and the inverters and all the supplies in and then do the installation for you. It usually takes a day or two. Overall, estimate maybe 3 to 4 months in the process. So a few considerations when you're kind of comparison shopping the different installers and different bids. A good target for the size of the system is about 80% of your electricity needs. There's this draw to try and get 100% of your energy from the solar, but the way that net metering works, the way that ComEd pays you for the energy you're producing but not using, really economically, it makes sense to shoot for about 80%. You could still buy the rest from the utility. Like I said, get quotes from a few installers, and when you're comparing them, ask for some references. Look for companies that are reliable and responsive. And I also think companies that have good coordination between the sales and installation team is very important as well. So this is my system. I went solar initially in 2016. The picture here in the top left is my first system, and that was actually sized to take care of all the energy needs for my whole house. And it worked out really well until a year and a half later, I bought an electric car and started buying electricity again. And I'm like, I still have my west side of the roof. So I installed 9 more panels on the west side of the roof after that. The initial installation has an inverter on the outside of the house. That's what the inverter looks like on the right side. And the second installation I did on the bottom has micro inverters. It all kind of feeds in together and all works the same. And like I said, the lights go on when I flip the switch. I don't really think about it too much. This is a couple pictures of when the installation was taking place. The installers install what's called a racking system, which attaches to the roof joints. They flash it and seal it. And then the panels just they fly up a ladder. They're actually really thin and fairly lightweight. And you can see by scale to the installer up there how big they are. They just kind of click in place into the racking system. It all gets wired up, and then you get an app once you've powered on the system, and you can kind of check every day and see, oh, I've made a lot of energy today, or oh, I can see it was cloudy around noon today. The production dropped a little bit. You definitely are going to produce a lot more energy during the spring and summer months when it's sunny. And the days are longer than you're going to in the winter months like we're at right now. And there's days where I'm not producing energy when there's snow sitting on the panels, but that all gets factored in. The installers, like I said, they know how sunny it is in Illinois and how much snow to expect and what the tilt of your roof is going to factor into all that, so they can size your system appropriately for your energy needs. So I've mentioned a couple times that solar is the cheapest way to get energy in Illinois. So I'm going to explain just how that works. So we have supply credits, which basically means you're making your energy for free. There's rebates from ComEd, and then there's state and federal incentives. So when you're making your energy, you're getting that energy for free. But the energy that you're making and not consuming, it gets fed out onto the grid. That's a process called net metering, right? So the utility basically monitors how much energy you're putting out onto the grid and gives you a credit for that. Now, in the past, the credits were a little bit different than they are now. Right now, if you look at your ComEd bill, there's a section that's supply charges, there's delivery, and then there's taxes and fees. For every kilowatt hour you put out onto the grid, you get credited on your supply charge. You don't get credit for the delivery or the taxes. There's different ways of doing this. You could do this on a kilowatt hour per kilowatt hour basis, or if you're in a pricing program called real-time pricing, it's done on a dollar basis. I'll go into that a little bit on the next slide. It's a little bit Solar 102, not Solar 101, so I don't want to dwell on that too much. But generally, it's best to consume the energy you produce rather than sell it back to the grid at this time. So, most of us here probably have fixed price. You pay the same amount per kilowatt hour, whether you're using it in a sunny afternoon in August when demand is through the roof, or overnight when no one's using electricity. By comparison, hourly pricing takes those demand factors into consideration. I'm on hourly pricing, so for me, if it's a sunny day and I'm not using a lot of electricity, but there's a lot of demand, I'm selling that electricity to the utility for a high price. Overnight, I charge my car, and there's very little demand. Sometimes the price even goes negative. So I'm selling low, selling high and buying low. Buy low, sell high. I think that's the usual way. So if you have an EV, hourly pricing is great. If you can kind of time shift some of your use of things, hourly pricing is great. If you don't want to think about all that stuff, then fixed price is a good option as well. And I wanted to have a recent bill up here, but since the net metering kind of changed, we don't have any current bills, but this just shows the different sections. And when you're on solar, you're going to get these lines at the top, which shows how much energy you took in from the grid and how much energy you put out to the grid. And in this particular customer, they basically put out twice as much energy that month as they took in. And ComEd will keep track of this, and your surplus will carry from month to month. So the excess that you make during the sunny months will often carry you through the darker months. So that's kind of how the supply stuff works. Then we get these rebates. So there's something called the distributed generation rebate or smart inverter rebate. This is from ComEd. They pay you $300 per kilowatt of generating capacity in your system. This comes as a check in the mail. You have to have a smart inverter that comes with it, and that's probably become the industry standard at this point. So that's going to knock down the upfront cost of the solar system. People often ask about batteries, and there is a storage rebate from ComEd that's very similar to the distributed generation rebate. And batteries are a great way to avoid power outages if you really need to have electricity all the time. And they can also provide a small amount of savings by helping you self-consume the electricity and sort of time shift things around. If you do use the battery rebate, you have to be on one of ComEd's sort of time of day pricing incentive programs, either hourly or peak time pricing. So that's the rebate. That's the middle section. All right. And then the last section of incentives is the federal and state incentives. And a lot of all the state incentives are there because of the Clean and Equitable Jobs Act, which passed in 2021, which puts Illinois on a path to 100% clean energy by 2050. And it provides investment basically to help people and businesses get solar on the grid. And they do that in Illinois through a program of SRECs, which stands for Solar Renewable Energy Credit. That represents 1 megawatt hour of solar energy produced. And the state rebate for the SRECs will cover about 20 to 30% of the total installation cost. You have to, there's a process to obtain the SRECs that you either have to go through your installer or through a third party to do that. So when you are comparing quotes, check and see, well, is your installer going to do your SREC contract, or is a third party going to? And if it's a third party, are they going to be keeping a cut of it? Just another way to make sure you're kind of comparing apples to apples. But that's the state program. And then on the federal side, there's an investment tax credit, which was renewed by the Inflation Reduction Act. And this covers 30% of the installed cost of the solar system. That is scheduled to step down in 2033, although, with the current administration, who knows? But it does seem like, from everything I've been hearing, it's going to stay in place for at least the next 2 years, because this is tax law. It would ideally require Congress to act to repeal the tax law. So this seems like it's solid and reliable. But between these two, you're going to get about 60% back of the installed cost. So I mentioned the SRECs. This is just sort of a graphic. Again, you produce energy. The state kind of estimates how much energy your system will produce over 15 years, and they give you a payment upfront for that. And the payment is variable. It's through this thing called the adjustable block program. It depends on where your system is, whether it's downstate or up in ComEd, and how big it is and how much of a demand there is. So the prices that they pay do fluctuate a little bit. But I want to give you a sample. This is probably the moment you've all been waiting for. And this is just a sample. Everyone's installation is different. Everyone's energy needs are different. Everyone's roof is different. There's different panels, different ways of doing things. But this is just a rough example here. Most homes in our area use between 9 and 10 kilowatt hours of energy. More if you own an electric vehicle. So a simple sample system would have 26 solar panels, which would be 12 kW DC system. Now the upfront costs $40,000. Okay, but you get your federal tax credit for that, knocks it down $12,000. that'll come to you in tax season. Now, if you don't have tax liability, that might look different. But for most people, that's going to just come back as a credit on, it's not a deduction, it's a credit. Then you get the Illinois SREX. That's another 30% or so. This comes as a check, typically 6 months after the system is turned on. ComEd rebate that we talked about, right? So that's going to knock it down another $3,500. That comes a few months after the system is turned on. Now that brings your net cost down to $10,000 and you own the system. And that's basically covering the electricity for the next 25 years. All right. So $10,000 over 25 years, not too bad. When you consider most homes that use this much electricity are going to have an electric bill of about $200 per month or $2,400 per year. With solar, your bill should be $80 a month, which means you spend $1,000 a year. Or if you do hourly pricing, maybe $60 per month. So per year over 25 years, that's a 15% return on your investment, as long as the sun comes up, right? Stock market's going to have ups and downs. You're going to get taxed on your gains from the stock market. This is energy savings. This is money you're not having to spend and send to ComEd. That's a fantastic return on your investment. There we go. So that's great for a lot of people, but what if you live in a house like that where you get trees everywhere? Or what if you live in a condo? Or what if that $40,000 or $10,000 is just not in the equation for you? There's different options, right? There's loans. You can get a traditional loan from a bank or home equity loan. You can get a solar loan. This is a customized loan for buying solar systems. And there could be a short-term loan that just covers you until you get the rebates back from the government, or you can do a longer-term loan. ISEA partners with the Clean Energy Credit Union, which focuses exclusively on providing loans for clean energy and energy-saving projects. But if you buy the system, if you use a loan, if eventually you pay it off and you own it, and it's yours. The other option, you can lease. This is where you don't own the solar array, it's owned by a third party. Now, the advantage of the lease is that there's little to no upfront cost. You don't have to worry if something breaks, it's their responsibility to take care of it. But you have to really understand the contract. There's going to be a lower financial return compared with ownership. So a lot of these lease agreements will have what's called an escalator. So every year, the amount that you're paying them goes up bit by bit. And by the end of the contract, you're actually perhaps paying quite a bit on a monthly basis. The other issue is that you're entering in a long-term lease. And what if you decide to sell your house 10 years later? There could be some issues if the new owner doesn't want to be part of this lease agreement. So you have to be very clear up front with whoever's trying to lease the system. Well, what happens if I want to sell? Whose problem is that if the new owner doesn't want it? And be very clear about the economics of the escalators. There is a program in Cook County that I just recently found out about. This is not endorsed by ISEA, but it's called Cook County Sun and Save. And this is for homeowners with gross incomes of $90,000 to $135,000. And it's administered by CDAC, and the funding is through the American Rescue Plan Act, which I'm not sure if still exists, but it will fully cover the cost of solar. There's a link there, but Cook County Sun and Save is worth looking into if you fit into that category. Now, again, what if you live in a condo or you have trees everywhere? You can still get solar. You can still get your energy from the sun for cheaper than the utility through a program called Community Solar. So these are larger scale solar installations, typically in rural Illinois, covering acres of land where individuals or businesses can subscribe. So you see in the picture here, this is sort of a simplification, but there's a family that may say, all right, these 8 solar panels are mine. There's a diner that says these 6 are mine. And you don't have to be located anywhere near this. As long as it's within ComEd territory, it could be an eligible project for you to subscribe to. And you don't actually get the electrons directly from there, but you're basically helping them get clean electricity on the grid, and they give you a bill savings, about 10%, maybe a little more off your regular electric bill. Again, your lights still work the same. You just get a smaller bill, and you know that you're putting more solar energy on the grid in Illinois. And what you pay is proportional to the amount of energy that you're subscribed to. And there's a bunch of companies that do this. Citizens Utility Board is a great reference to see what community solar offers are available. The Village of Wilmette has partnered with MC Squared, which is a energy supplier, to offer a community solar program. There's currently a wait list to subscribe. But this is one that the village has partnered with. This program is not specifically endorsed by ISEA, but at ISEA, we do certainly endorse community solar. So next steps. If this sounds good to you, I really encourage you to find an installer, use our Find a Professional tool on illinoissolar.org, get some installers to come out and ask all your questions and get some bids. If you're really excited about solar, we'd love to have you as a member, and you can do stuff like this. And then also just check out our website. We have a lot of public education stuff and advocacy stuff as well. So in summary, solar technology is here. It will save you money. It is a key way to counter climate change. And now is really a great time to do it. Take that step. I encourage you all to be part of the solution. And for more information, again, illinoissolar.org. And at this point, I would welcome any questions that you might have. Yeah.
I've got two questions. And one just to put it in context. I just had a system installed, 14 solar panels installed. I'm waiting for the beginning of next week to get it, the final certificate of completion. The Village of Glenview is coming to sign off. Is there anything I should be particularly aware of as a new solar owner that perhaps I wouldn't necessarily come to mind with the research I've done? And then the second question is, with the hourly pricing that ComEd offers versus the fixed price, how many times can you switch that on and off during the course of a year?
Yeah.
Do you just do it during the summer?
Good questions. For the first one, I think what to think about as a new solar owner, I would check out the app that comes with your system and just kind of monitor. A lot of them have where you could break it down by panel, make sure each panel is working as expected, and definitely do that. Tell your neighbors, invite them over, show it off, brag about it. But other than that, I don't really think there's much. Like I said, it just kind of sits on the roof and just lowers your bills. There's not a whole lot you have to do or really think about. And then in terms of the hourly pricing, I would first pay attention to what's called the capacity charge. And before you switch, you may want to ask ComEd what your capacity charge is going to be. So basically the capacity charge, they look back at the trailing 12 months and look at like the 5 highest demand days and say, all right, how much electricity did this guy use? And then they kind of factor all that in and give you a capacity charge on your bill that comes when you're on the hourly rate. When I first switched over, I was like, whoa, what's this extra $11 a month that I'm paying? Oh, that's the capacity charge. I didn't like that. So I waited a year, and on those really high demand days, I'm usually exporting to the grid. So my capacity charge is often, and it's negative in some months. So I would find out about that ahead of time. It may be best just to kind of wait a year just to really hammer down that capacity charge. You want that low. Yeah. You don't want to be penalized for, using your air conditioning last August. And in terms of how often you can switch back, I'm not sure. I think it might just be once a year, but don't quote me on that. I think that information's on the website, Paul.
You can move between basic electric service and basic electric service hourly. You have to stay on a program for at least 6 months, and then you can revert back to the previous one. And you have to remain on that program for a year. So essentially, you could cycle every 18 months. And to build a little bit on that idea of capacity charge, it's the ways that you want to hack or to reduce that charge. It's, imagine you pay a bit of a premium if you are gluttonous with energy. So if you need a big pipe to feed your house for just a few minutes, you're gonna have to put in place a larger highway to feed electricity into you. If you minimize the demand, so for instance, don't charge your car, induction cook, and run your AC or heat pump at full blast simultaneously, that would result in a real high capacity because you're asking the electric company to serve you a lot in a given moment. What you could do then is just be cognizant, and anyone who's operating on hourly pricing is going to take advantage of that, and making sure that you're not concurrently drawing those big loads, and that's a way that you can reduce this. What a capacity charge does, it tacks on a small percentage of additional cost or a multiplier for every kilowatt hour that comes into your home. So if your capacity charge is 2, and your capacity charge is 1, who's paying 2 cents for every kilowatt hour? You're paying 1 cent for every kilowatt. Thank you.
All right, yeah.
Hey, could I ask you or these gentlemen to talk about the pros and cons of putting panels on a separate garage if you don't have enough roof space or it's too your house is too shaded and you have a sunny roof area on your garage?
Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Yes, you can trench. This installer can trench to the garage. That will bring the power back to the meter on the house. In Chicago, sometimes the meters are on the garage, and then it's even simpler. But yeah, that gets factored into any costs, and it's very doable. So we recommend it. Yeah, if you've got a sunny roof, it's doable. Are you in Wilmette?
Yeah.
Okay, so Wilmette does have some zoning restrictions, so just bear in mind, sometimes if it's like, say, closer than like say 5 feet to the property line, they may say, oh, the solar panel has to be brought back, or you can't have as many so that you pull the array up, or what have you. So just keep in mind that sometimes there are some tight restrictions with the zoning because our backyards are close to the property lines in the back there, but certainly worth getting a quote from people.
Thank you.
Another great point about putting them on your garage, when you're digging that trench, that's an opportunity for also to lay in a circuit to put a car charger in your
Yes.
garage.
Yes.
In some places, unlike Wilmette, it's actually advantageous to put them on your garage because there won't be any rules. They'll say, cover the whole roof.
That's true. Yeah, sometimes there are no setback rules on a detached structure. Most usually, yes. So then you can.
Beth?
Could you step up to the mic and tell people how many solar installations there already are in Wilmette? I'm afraid they won't pick you up if you're not here tonight.
Sure. So every year we've asked for our solar tour. We've asked the village to be kind and share the number of solar projects that have been permitted. Last year was 24 in the village, which is good. It's decent. You know, we have trees. We have beautiful trees here that we want to keep. But there are those pockets, and typically our houses do have a bit more complicated roof structures than, a farm style or a ranch style, but things can still be doable. And so, I would say there's about, since 2018, I would say there's about 100 solar, homes in Wilmette.
One
Okay.
today.
Oh, wonderful. Well, that was a good guess.
I remember hearing that if your panels were gonna get shaded at all, it eliminated solar as a possibility. I think that's changed. Can you talk about partial shade?
Sure. Yeah, so there are micro inverters and there's also string inverters, and both have really evolved to deal with shade tolerance, basically. So as the sun shifts, parts of the panel that have the sun exposure or even light shade exposure can still produce. Yeah. So, and if part of your house is shaded for half the day, but not the other half of the day, that solar calculator that all installers have will show you what that roof plane can produce. So that'll be factored into your yearly production.
Jay, could you explain home battery storage? Thank you, Amy. Could you explain home battery storage again to the audience? Is that something that an installer would offer, or do you have to get battery storage through a third party?
Sure. So, batteries are getting more and more popular, and I think most solar companies would offer them along with the solar, because they really go hand in hand. They help you use your solar more efficiently. In Illinois, fortunately, we have a pretty reliable grid. So one of the main attractions for batteries is a backup. In case the power goes down, you want to still be able to have electricity. I mean, they're not super cheap, but if you want to have that resilience, that's certainly something that would be worthwhile. The other main use for batteries is to kind of shift your use of electricity around to better consume what you produce, which financially has a little bit of a payoff. It's not a super huge payoff. It's like a $300 per year is what you estimated, Paul. But for some people, they just love the idea of batteries and having that as a backup for that security. For me personally, I mean, I've gotten 2 electric cars, so I have between the 2 of them over 100 kilowatt hours of storage parked in my garage, which is like 10 Tesla power walls, and I can run an extension cord from my car and plug my refrigerator into it. So if the power goes out, I can keep all my food cool that way. So for me, I think batteries are cool, but I don't have a pressing need to purchase one.
Can you tell us, do the batteries have a life expectancy which is the same as the solar panels, or shorter or longer, or?
I'm gonna defer to the experts on this one.
So, some ways you could say, well, I'll point this out, the same bits that are gonna go into a battery in your home are already what's in a car. I love telling this anecdote. There's a guy who bought a Tesla, early one, Model S, early days. He's an Uber driver. And he drives every day between Los Angeles and San Francisco. He can find one customer. He signed up for when he got free charging on the network. So it essentially cost him nothing to operate this vehicle. This car has about 270,000 miles on it as a date. A home battery is going to has a small amount of degradation. Every time you discharge and recharge a lithium ion battery, lithium iron phosphate or LNMC, the different chemistries, it degrades it a small amount. So the harder and faster you charge and discharge it, the more stress you're putting on that chemistry in there, which is going to accelerate the growth of, they're called dendrites, which essentially short these out. Most lithium ion batteries are designed to have a life of about 11 years. or something along the lines of about 16,000 full depth of discharge cycles. So you could empty your battery and fill it back up again. It's the same as if like on your computer battery or your phone, you've got the same chemistry inside of there. You know that if you don't charge it all the way down to empty and don't charge it all the way up to 100%, you can keep that thing healthy and lasting for years. But I think if you were using your battery every single day to do what Jay called rate shifting, right, where you take a little sunlight from the middle of the day, put it in your battery, and then borrow it back after dinner time when the sun goes down, you are probably going to have your battery be fruitful and effective for 10, 12 years. If you're looking at it in terms of just a backup source, or maybe you're only going to tap into it 3 or 4 times a year, there's really a potential for that battery system to last for decades and decades because you're maintaining the health of that.
Mhm. Thank you.
And there's warranties, you know, there's good warranties on all the solar equipment.
And I know that you said that we have a fairly reliable grid. I would suggest that if you guys drive around and look to see how many people have generators in their yards, it's surprising in this area. Some of it is you can afford it. A lot of people are working from home now, but those people would be prime candidates for a system with batteries.
Exactly. I think that's something that's really emerged recently is, you know, the advent of I work from home every day and it's costly to be out of power on that. And the scenario that you can imagine, sometimes power blinks on and off, right? And it might be out for, 10 minutes or something, or they might be doing a little bit of work in your neighborhood and they come around and tell you that it's going to be out for, a few hours. August 27th or 22nd, I forget, was the hottest day of 2024. And a huge bomb cyclone came across Chicagoland area. It started out kind of out by Grace Lake. It hit full force to Buffalo Grove. I was literally watching the storm. Came through and just came right across Glencoe, Winnetka, a big chunk of Glenview, Wilmette, Skokie. Trees came down on that. There was, I think, something like 23,000 homes without power. A good friend of mine is up in Glencoe, and a tree fell on the lines and took out the transformer in her neighborhood. And she was without power for 3 days, only because there was so much work for ComEd to do that as they dispatched resources on it, it just took 72 hours to get all the parts and equipment and crews to come in there and tackle all these little individual outages. And I think that that's the scenario that is the most likely one that could be really damaging, because now you can take that same scenario and it's not August on a nice hot day, but it's a storm that comes through in the winter. And maybe it's a big ice storm and starts to take out power outages. And now your home is sitting without power for 3 days, and it's also 2 degrees outside. And now you're at the risk of having some damage done to your home because pipes may freeze on that. And these are the kinds of things that climate change is really exacerbating that are going to be the scenarios that are going to touch us. We're never going to see fires like they're going on in Los Angeles, but there is reality that we're just going to see stresses where these small inconvenient things will grow in their frequency and also are going to grow into the potential damage that they could do to your home.
Thank you.
Okay, a question here again.
About this. And so in terms of the fact that the House passed a budget resolution yesterday, and, in terms of the investments for the tax credit, the federal tax credit, everybody seems to be saying, oh, don't worry about it, but it just strikes me that that's a little bit naive. Do you have any more information on that?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I've talked to people and they've kind of said, what I've told you, but I think I'm not confident in anything to be honest anymore, but
There's a bit of procedure that we're watching a reconciliation session that's gonna happen in June. And in a reconciliation session, you can take appropriations from the previous year's budget and essentially open them up to negotiations. And that's the potential where funding from money that was allocated through the IRA in the previous year could come onto that. The mechanics of going after specifically the 30% residential tax credit is going to be introduction of a new piece of legislation that is either going to overturn or repeal that law or replace it with something else. And that's a much more difficult kind of political task to get through because it's going to require consensus across the board. And
One of the things that would not be part of reconciliation.
That would not be
new
part of
bills that
reconciliation.
require a supermajority or 60%.
Yeah, yeah.
Got it.
And we're sort of the folks that are high up in the renewable industry really made smart bets. They didn't buy off the senators and congressmen in California and Illinois. They bought off the congresswomen and senators in Ohio, Georgia, Nevada, Michigan, places where there's been huge investments in renewable energy, projects that are getting built or the manufacturer going into place so that red states have a lot of skin in the game in this industry. And there will be folks that will say, no, I don't want those jobs cut in my district.
Yeah.
No, how does snow affect the solar panels and its functionality? Am I supposed to, do you go out and shovel snow, or how does that happen?
yeah. Well, if there's a thick layer of snow, then they're not producing. If you have some slant on your roof, the panels being dark, they'll often heat up a little bit and the snow will slide off. That's all factored in when the system's being sized in the consultation. I wouldn't advise going up on the roof to shovel your panels for the $3 a day of electricity that they would be making. It's not worth it. Yeah. And Beth,
Take a look at Ed's solar calculator. It's very simplistic, but do you think that's a good step for somebody just to get some idea?
yeah, ComEd's got one. There's something called Project Sunroof that Google has, and those are kind of good starting points. I wouldn't put too much faith in the numbers and the cost of the systems that those calculators spit out, but just to kind of qualitatively get an idea of how much sun your roof gets, I think those are helpful to look at.
Go back to what you guys were talking about in the beginning, before it started, about why the fire chief has a part of the permitting, what he's, why
Yeah.
their involvement.
Yes, solar.
So in the solar permitting process and the engineering process, we have to follow many codes, building codes, fire codes, even NFPA. So the fire codes and the Illinois residential code has what we call solar setbacks. And the setbacks basically state that usually you need about 3 feet of open walkable space on your roof. On one side, let's say the one side of the roof is like the rake, and also on the ridge. And so when a solar company should be taking those setbacks into consideration when they are designing your system. So it's for, and so some municipalities, their fire department will say, we're not going to get up on the roof anyway, but that a municipality will still follow the setbacks. So each municipality in Illinois has their own codes, like own code years. And, but there is a general trend on what they are. Mhm. Yeah. So, we want to thank Jay for this presentation, and we hope it was helpful for everybody. And if you have any other questions, you can reach out to If you've come through like the Go Green website, you can email our info@gogreenwilmette.org. You can go to the ISEA website, which of course is who hosted us here today. And they have the illinoissolar.org website. There's also the Wilmette .gov website, and if they have a search bar right on their home screen, so if you just put in solar, it pops up to the community solar page and also the solar permitting page. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. All right. Thank you.